I'm going to talk about various cartridges and calibers and to do with bullet weights and velocities. We seem to have taken a considerable step backwards here in the past few years, and it all pretty much started with the 6.5 Creedmoor. 6.5 Creedmoor is a very accurate cartridge designed for target shooting. And as a rule, most people that are shooting this round and using it to hunt with are using 140 some odd grain bullets to do so. Now, it's not possible to push that weight of bullet out of that cartridge past about 2,700 feet a second. A lot of instances, the ammunition that's available is loaded somewhere in the 2,600 feet a second. And I've stated that it was a fairly short range game cartridge. Well, it should be real obvious it doesn't have the velocity starting out to begin with to give you the kill effect on the game. And one of the reasons that I'm bringing this up is that nobody has seemed to caught on to what makes it a better game round than it is with the 140 some weight bullets. And that is to shoot bullets that are lighter. Bullets between 120 and 130 grain weight, and there's a considerable number of choices. And most of them are very good choices for the cartridge. But the cartridge is still just a fairly short range deer cartridge. If you shot, for instance, 120 grain Barnes X bullets out of that cartridge, you'd find out very quickly with the game that is hit properly with that bullet that you're going to have better kill effect. And you're going to have better kill effect farther because the velocity is up considerable. And we can run around 2850 with a 120 grain bullet. In some instances, depending on the actual bullet, 120 grain bullets can be run up there right around 2950. The Barnes X bullet easily can be run to 2850 to 2900. We've got some of the more conventional bullets that are a bit softer bullet. They can be loaded to higher velocity because they don't build the pressure, but they still kill better because there's higher velocity. Now, Roy Weatherby wasn't wrong when he said that velocity kills, but you've got to have good bullets and the game's got to be hit properly to be able to take advantage of these situations. Now, I've had a considerable amount of experience with 6.5 calibers. I shoot and have virtually just about everything that there is to be had between a 6.5 Creedmoor and a 6.5 by 300 Weatherby. And as you go up in velocities with the cartridges, as the cartridge cases get a little bit bigger to give you a little bit more velocity, performance improves. The best performances are out of the 6.5-06, 6.5-06 Acme Improved, the 6.5 Gibbs, and the 264 Winchester. Now all those cartridges will run the bullets virtually almost anything that you want to shoot up over 3,100, 3,200, depending on your bullet weights, perhaps close to 3,300 feet a second. Now, it should be very, very obvious that if you're shooting a cartridge let's say for instance like the 264 Winchester, and you're shooting 120 grain Barnes X triple shock bullets at 3,300 feet a second against a 6.5 Creedmoor with that same weight bullet, you're pushing between 400 and 450 feet a second more velocity with that cartridge. It gives you more downrange energy. The bullet opens quicker. It gives quicker kills. It's just all plain and simple. And this applies to everything that we have in the way of calibers. But I'm choosing to touch on this area of bullet diameter. I've stated that the 25-06 and the 25-06 actually improved in the 257 Weatherby is a far better game cartridge than a 6.5 Creedmoor for any purpose with any bullet weight at any velocity. Any velocity that the Creedmoor is capable of. When you step the velocities up, you all of a sudden, in using the right bullet weights, and I'm talking about 25 calibers using between 110 and 120 grain bullets, you're going to be running somewhere between 33 and 3,400 and about 50 feet a second with the velocities. It should be very simple that it's a better cartridge. But we've got the uninformed crowd that just doesn't seem to ever want to understand that it's not the BC. It's not the BC. It's the velocities and the construction of the bullets and the placement of the bullet that's doing the job. The 6.5 Creedmoor is not capable of taking advantage of the heavier bullet weights because it's not capable of giving you the velocity. Yeah, it's got a BC, but that's not the point, folks. You got to have velocity. And our real game cartridges, the better game cartridges to take advantage of the wonderful bullets that we have today and have had for quite some time, and that continue to improve upon a few areas to do with bullets, are the cartridges that push bullets 3,100 feet a second and faster. These are simply the better rounds. Now, it should be very, very obvious, no matter what your level of understanding is, it should be real clear that if we're shooting a 25-06 Ackley improved with a 120 grain bullet at 3,400 feet a second, that it's going to cancel anything and everything out to do with the little pet Creedmoor cartridge. It doesn't have the velocity. It doesn't have the punch. It's limited to the capabilities. And you see, this is part of what it's about. All of us can shoot cartridges in about the 25 caliber to 6.5 caliber category that give good velocities. I'm talking about 3,100 to 3,400 feet a second in velocities within reasonable game ranges of those cartridges out to around 400 to 500 yards on deer, antelope, sheep size game. They do a wonderful job. And as a matter of fact, those cartridges will do a good job killing elk, caribou, and one thing another with properly placed shots with the proper bullets for the purpose. Now, I've used all these cartridges. I've killed a considerable amount of game. And I've mentioned along the line happened to kill elk with a 6mm. I've killed 4 elk myself with a 6mm Remington with 100 grain Sierras pushing over 3,200 feet a second. But I wouldn't think of shooting an elk past about 200 yards. I don't recommend it as an elk cartridge, but it will kill an elk quicker shot in the armpit with a 100 grain bullet than your 6.5 Creedmoor will with a 43 or 147 grain bullet. It's just plain and simple. The velocities are there. The bullet opens quick. It does quite a bit of damage. It bleeds the animal out quickly. We drop these velocities down. Let's take 140 some odd grain bullet that's starting out at say let's just say 2,700 feet a second. By the time it's reached 200 yards, it's fell off over 300 to 350 feet a second in velocity. Now, where's the terminal performance that we seem to be hung up on? The terminal performance can't be there because the velocity's not there. But we've got terminal performance out of the higher velocity cartridge. It should be very simple. Even a 6mm, like I've pointed out, is capable. But it's not a good choice. And I actually think that elk cartridges actually start at 6.5 caliber, larger size cases, and goes on up. It's still not ideal. We've got a better round in a 270 with the heavier bullet weights. Bullets placed properly. Now, I knew an old man that was the first man on predator control in Yellowstone Park, and he had one of the first bolt action rifles that Savage ever made in 253,000. I visited with him over many years. He lived to be 95 years old. He was a wealth of information. He was a cool shot. And he was predator control man in Yellowstone Park after World War I, and for quite a number of years. And he would shoot buffalo with that rifle. I'm talking about 2,000, 2,500 pound buffalo. He would shoot with that rifle. And he'd shoot them just under the ear and just drop them in their tracks. They'd just flop. He'd shoot these buffalo and he'd use them to bait grizzly bears and to bait wolves and to bait coyotes. Well, he related to me that he used that 87 grain Loveloy ammunition made by Remington at the time, traveling about 3,000 feet a second. He shot the buffalo with that. He shot 41 grizzlies with that bullet, with 43 shots. He eradicated the wolves out of Yellowstone Park with that rifle, shot many coyotes with that rifle, and he never shot a buffalo or a grizzly bear past about 80 yards. Somewhere between 70 and 80 yards is where he shot these animals. He had a blind. He built a blind and he slipped into that blind and either find a bear feeding or wait until the bear come in to feed on that carcass, and he'd shoot him. And he'd shoot the grizzlies right in the same area. The only reason that he had to use 43 rounds to kill 41 grizzlies is because their head moved a bit when he touched it off. And the bear was in bad shape, but he had to shoot him a second time. Now, you see, we're talking about animal control situations here. We're not talking about the average hunter that maybe or maybe isn't even capable of doing what I've just described. And I've shot over my lifetime a considerable amount of animals right in the base of the head, or right in the head, inside a reasonable distance, because I didn't want to ruin absolutely any meat whatsoever. And I always did it almost invariably did it with something in 6mm up to 6.5 caliber. And I first started shooting the 6.5 caliber, 6.5 Remington Magnum in 1968. And I'm still shooting one of those rifles, one of those caliber rifles, one of those chamberings, after all these years. So I've been using one for quite a while. You know, that goes back a spell. So anyway, I need to explain a few things here. We have all the Barnes line of the copper bullets. Whether it's their triple shock or their tip triple shock or their long range X bullets. When any of those bullets made out of that material slow down to 2,300 feet a second at the striking distance where the animal is, do not shoot any game where your bullet slows down slower. And this includes Nosler's line of E-tips. This includes Hornady's line, a GMX and their new CX bullet, and any other bullet that might happen to be made out of solid material and doesn't have a lead core. Any of these bullets, the proof is all there by the manufacturers. They put pictures out with all their bullets, and when we slow down, they've got pictures of bullets slowed down to 1,900 feet a second. The bullet just hardly starts to open at the tip at 1,900 feet a second, but it's got a good mushroom at 2,300. Well, it should be very obvious that whatever that distance is, and it's probably somewhere right around the 500-yard mark where we need to draw the line where we're shooting any animal with those bullets. You're going to shoot animals 600, 700, 800 yards, you're going to have a real problem. You're going to have a real disappointment because the bullet's not going to expand. There's not going to be the type of effect that that bullet gives. The Barnes X, all those Barnes bullets, including the Hornady and the Nosler E-tip, all hit hard. They've got a solid base. The bullet opens back to a certain point, and it can't expand any further. You need to pay attention to what's going on with this situation. But there's some of these areas here that I'm touching on because I have the background, the years of experience shooting game, that I know what works, and I pay attention. And I pay attention to these ads put out by all these bullet manufacturers. Everybody's making quite a good product, but we need to understand where we need to draw the line with this, folks. And that's where we need to draw the line. And if you take this information and use it as a guideline, because you're shooting these calibers and so forth, pay attention, I think that you'll have better results than what you've had in the past.